We've been rocking since the Sandbox, man. Stop playing with my dog, Scuba Steve. He the man, got plans, bro, to give him what you need. Hot damn, from the court to the field, they elite. I'm saying why, yes, got the hot takes and loose, stay checking. Talking about all the highlights from alleys to interceptions, from tutties to dope receptions and fantasy week projections. And honestly think you gotta tune in to get the message. Let's go.
Since the Sandbox fans, it's April, so you know what that means. You know what time it is. It's mock draft time. We're bringing you the first mock draft from the Since the Sandbox podcast today. And we'll be going live a week before the draft, me, Twon, and Ben Scarpa, to give you guys the draft live on YouTube. But today, this is what we're going to do. I need you guys to get the rundown really quickly before we get into it. Me and Twon are going to alternate picks. So I'm going to start with one here with the Carolina Panthers. He'll be on the clock with two, and we'll continue. We do not have any pre-made picks. There's no arrangement here. We have about a top 50, and we're just kind of going to make that work with teams that see fit. Before we get into the episode, guys, make sure to go and check out Sophomore Slumps of Success Part 2. We gave you guys episode 1 and 2. We got the DraftKings episode coming out next week and a bunch of content getting prepared for you guys. Twon, let's get into it. The Carolina Panthers are now on the clock with the first overall pick. So we know what happened, right? They made a move up for this trade. Really exciting to kick off draft season. But you know when a team makes this trade, they're trading up for a quarterback. Like, I love your Will Anderson, and I think you're the best defensive player in the draft, but Carolina is not giving up all that capital to get a defensive player. They're looking to change the franchise. And the person that's going to do that, in my opinion, is the most pure passer in this class, the best quarterback in this class. Not sure, where that really stands as far as future success. It'll obviously, get determined a little bit more with team fit and how the rest of the draft goes. But at one, Twon, this is where the C.J. Stroud is going, to the Carolina Panthers at one. Look, I know they're talking to Richardson. I know Bryce Young's a great talent at the quarterback position. I just feel like if you have your selection of any player in this draft and it's not C.J. Stroud, I feel like you're not always doing your homework. Or maybe you're doing, maybe too much homework, and I just feel like it might be having you just thinking a little bit off pace. So C.J. Stroud here at one for the Carolina Panthers. I think he's going to be their quarterback that they've been looking for the past couple years, and, should keep them competitive in that division for at least the next 5 and hopefully the next decade.
I love it. We've been saying it since the beginning. C.J. Stroud should go on 1. And that brings me to number 2 with the Houston Texans taking Bryce Young.
Okay.
I think he is the second best quarterback in the draft, not too far behind Stroud, but I do think Stroud is a little bit better, and as of now, he can bring more to the table. What we know about Bryce Young, though, is he is a winner. He plays elite competition, and I do think he's NFL ready. So going to a Texans organization that is being fully restructured, he's going to have a chance to play behind an awesome O-line. I'm excited to see what he does in Houston.
Yeah, and going to Houston, I mean, you obviously go down there, and we talked about, his college teammate in Mechie III. And he obviously played a little bit with Mac Jones and things like that. But, you build and you establish those relationships. You have Mechie, you have Damian Pierce, you have Dalton Schultz, and I'm sure that they're going to continue to add to, make that offense a little bit more of a fluent and consistent unit going forward. Their offensive line's already decent, you know what I mean? So usually if that's a thing that you have to work on, it really questions the quarterback selection. But new head coach, new regimen, pretty much new team.
Right. D'Amico's good, too.
Yeah.
He's a player's coach. I'm excited.
Absolutely. So Bryce Young here at 2. All right, 3. This is where things get really interesting. The Arizona Cardinals here. So obviously this is a team that has their franchise quarterback locked up, or at least we would assume so, with Kyler Murray. But out of I have a couple highlights here on my draft board. All the highlights here are teams that I think are in a likely trade scenario. Arizona, I feel like, could trade it out of this pick and still get a top 10 selection. Mm-hmm. So it just depends on how they really view what they have now, what their needs are, and things like that. Me personally, I have Arizona's biggest needs being defensive line, linebacker, defensive back, and offensive line. Not that they don't need specialists, not that they don't need running backs or tight ends or anything like that. Just think we need to mainly address what their biggest holes are. So for the Arizona Cardinals here at 3, I think this is likely a scenario that a team like Seattle, Detroit, Vegas, or Atlanta could trade up for an Anthony Richardson just to one up the Indianapolis Colts. Look, the Colts are in the quarterback market. Like let's not take that for granted. I don't think a Levis is going to be a guy that goes here at 4. Maybe the Colts are a team that look to get up to that 3 spot, but realistically, when it comes down to it for Arizona, I really feel like that this is going to be a position where they have to take, the best player available to them. And I personally believe that that's going to be Will Anderson here. So I know that this is, really cliche for the top 3 with Stroud, Bryce Young, and Will Anderson. But I just feel like we haven't really had those names that have popped up that are just like, oh, like this guy could leapfrog and be in the top 5. You could take a corner here. We saw what the impact of Sauce Gardner was. You can have a Witherspoon or a Gonzalez. Just feel like that's a tad early, and if you can have an impact pass rusher solidified on that defensive line for years to come, I think Will Anderson will do a great job at that.
I'm with you, and I also think he's the best player on the draft board.
At 3.
He's so good, and I'm right there with you. I think that we could see Arizona trade out, get a couple more picks for draft capital. But I mean, if you're looking at the best player on the board at that time, it's going to be Will Anderson. So love that. At 4, we mentioned the Colts are in the quarterback market. I would expect if Anthony Richardson's on the board, they're going to take Anthony Richardson. So that's who I'm going to go with at 4. There is potential that they're looking more at Levis and they trade back a little bit. I think I could see them potentially trading back to stay in the top 10 with another team that's more interested in Richardson specifically if they're looking for Levis. So I could see it. I don't think it's going to happen. Ideally, and what I expect is AR-15 going at 4. So I would expect him to go 4 to Indy. But don't be shocked if they trade back. I mean, there's a lot of crazy things we see on draft night, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, no, it really is. And I feel like all the things that come along with the draft are what make it so exciting, right? In my personal opinion, I feel like this is Anthony Richardson or Lamar Jackson. I feel like that's the only way the Colts can really value this. Not that they don't have offensive line holes, because they do, but I just feel like if you're a team like Indy who's been playing with the veteran quarterback market for quite some time now, if you don't sit here and address this now, it's just like, okay, like when are you going to get this addressed? And it's like, what is that going to tell guys like Michael Pittman or Jonathan Taylor or DeForest Buckner for that, who are playing their best football of their, likely career, and it's just like, okay, well, we're not going to sit here and play our best football and win 6 games with Indy. Yep. Lou, I know you want Anthony Richardson. I think that this is a great spot for him here. But I also know this team at 5 is heavily interested in Anthony Richardson. This is the Seattle Seahawks. I know that this is a team that just locked up Geno Smith, but it's a franchise-friendly deal for the quarterback position, if you want me to be honest. And there's options to get out of it after 1 year. There's options to make it stay for up to 3 years. You know what I mean? It all depends on what you really view as your future at that position. For Seattle here, I mean, I think it would make sense to go and get a guy like Richardson, move up and make that trade, but it just depends on what you really want to give up with future capital. They have another first-round pick here at 20, so it really makes it interesting on how they really want to value this. I personally think that Seattle has to go defense here with this pick. I feel like it's tough. I mean, you have Lockett and you have DK Metcalf, so I feel like if you're going to draft a wide receiver, I wouldn't spend a first-round pick on this guy. When it comes down to making this selection, I feel like I have to go, just more based on best player available. And for the Seattle Seahawks here, I'm going to go Tyree Wilson. I just feel like, he has that speed coming out of the pass rusher position. And I feel like Pete Carroll always does his homework when it comes to these defensive guys, right? Like Brooks was a guy that we looked at, a couple of years ago and wasn't like a big name school guy, but was a locked in first round selection. I feel like Seattle, if they don't really like what their options are here at 5, this could also be a team that trades back for, a team maybe looking to leapfrog to get a wide receiver like that, or maybe some offensive line needs. Not that Seattle couldn't go offensive line here, because they definitely could. Just feel like with the Seahawks and what they're trying to do, that this is a scenario that they might benefit a little bit more from a speed pass rusher like Tyree Wilson.
I love that, because I agree with you. I think he's also the best player on the board. And the next, almost a similar situation as the Lions, where they can certainly be in the market to move up and steal an Anthony Richardson or get a quarterback. But at 6, I see them staying right here. They could move up. I don't see it happening. I think there are other teams that are ready to do it, and I think they don't want to give I mean, I know I've been talking a lot about Jared Goff, but he had a pretty good year last year, and he's not somebody that I would give up on. I think you can definitely draft a quarterback behind him that he can help groom and things like that, but I don't know that it has to come this early or worth trading up for yet. So I think that they're going to go corner here. I think that they missed with Jeff Okudah at 3. I don't think Jeff Okudah is bad, but he hasn't performed to the number 3 overall pick that year. So I do think they're going to need a little bit more help in that secondary. They got Gardner Johnson, but they're going to need a lockdown guy. I think they're going to go Devon Witherspoon at 6. So taking a corner off the board, I do think that he's going to be the first corner taken personally. I don't think he's the best. Been talking a lot about Penn State and how much I love him. I think Joey Porter is, and I think you're on the same boat there.
Yes.
And I know Ben loves Christian Gonzalez, all really good picks, but I feel like the way everyone's looking at players right now, Devon Witherspoon's the one I'm hearing the most about.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like, size and playmaking ability is going to be, a big factor into that. Some people, how we value Joey Porter, as the best with all the experience he has, some people might just use that experience and just say, oh, like, that's giving him some clout. You know what I mean? Like, maybe we're talking about his name a little bit too much. But I feel like this is a direction that Detroit should go if they don't try and improve the offensive side of the ball. With the secondary position, I mean, we talked about, some of the losses that they had in that back end, but you still have Okudah, who you selected 3rd overall. You have Gardner Johnson in the back end. You just lost a corner to the New York Football Giants, so replacing that with a first-round pick, I feel like should cover you a little bit more on that back end. And, especially with Detroit has another first-round pick, right? Yeah, Detroit has another first-round pick. You could still go after, that pass rusher type of player, at 18, depending on where you really see your needs. Coming to the 7th overall pick, the Las Vegas Raiders. This is also a team that's in the quarterback market, but after, your top 3 go with Stroud, Young, and Richardson, I feel like it's going to be a little bit before we see, a Levis really go here. So, just looking at the Raiders for, the holes that they have in their team, I have offensive line, linebacker, and cornerback. I feel like this is likely a scenario that Vegas, if they're not really comfortable with the guys getting selected, that they could kind of trade back, get some more of that capital. Especially when Josh McDaniels comes for that Patriot kind of organization. Like, we obviously know the Pats love trading out of their picks.
Love keeping me up late just to do nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like after you pay Jacoby Myers and you have Devontae Adams, this isn't really a spot that you're looking to address, the quarterback, the wide receiver position. I feel like you can. There's definitely, a lot of talent here that's available, and that's why I think it's likely that a team could move up and trade. But this is where I feel like the first offensive line is going to come off the board. And, they obviously have invested some capital in the offensive line, but even if you have, some turnover at the tackle position, that's always a good position to have some depth in. And you need to keep Jimmy Garoppolo upright if you'd like to consider yourselves in competition to win that division. Forget about getting the contender title. So this is where I'm going to throw a little bit of a wrench here, Twon, because I know you really like Skoronski, but I'm going to have Paris Johnson go here first. Coming out of OSU, I feel like he has a really big mold. And, I was watching a little bit of the pro days from, guys like Darnell Wright and Jones at the tackle position. But, I really feel like Johnson's one of those bigger dudes that moves quick and is really going to go up draft boards. I wouldn't be surprised if this is even a name that we talk about inside that top 5 if Seattle decides to go offensive line in that position. But Paris Johnson here going to the Raiders.
I love that. And shout out Ben. He provided us a lot of good insight on one of the things that, and again, I like Skoronski a lot, but when you talk about wingspan and things like that, Paris Johnson's got him beat. And that's one of the things that sometimes we don't consider that a lot of other draft scouts do. Whereas, maybe they'll hold less because their arm length is a little bit longer. They're not necessarily reaching to try and keep people in front of them and things like that. But foot movement's also one of the most important things. So it's going to be really interesting to see. Going at number 8, Atlanta. This is an interesting one. Another team that definitely could be in the quarterback market. I don't know that they're looking to address it in this draft, though. So there's a couple of needs that they have. There really is a lot of spots that they can fill. They have a great corner in A.J. Terrell, so I don't think they're going to go in that direction. But I do think there's more in the defense that they need to firm up. And with the way that this player performed in the combine, I think Nolan Smith.
Okay.
I'm going to go Nolan Smith, man. I think they could use an edge rusher, somebody to really get after the passer. And correct me if I'm wrong, Nolan Smith's out of Georgia?
Yes.
I mean, it's a match made in heaven.
It's a Georgia pass rusher going to Atlanta.
I know. I mean, it's needed. Like, come on. Tell me we're not hoping. I think Nolan Smith had such a good combine, and I know we tend to let the combine skew what we really see or have seen in the past in college, but I mean, he just looks like one of those guys that's going to come in and make an immediate impact. So I'm going Nolan Smith to Atlanta at 8.
Okay. Well, what I will tell you, Twon, is I was going to have Nolan Smith going at 9 to the Chicago Bears.
Really?
So this is where, the real scenarios really play out. I really feel like Atlanta could have been, a team that went, in the direction of like a Miles Murphy maybe, but Nolan Smith is still, one of those guys more on the edge where, Murphy can kind of be more of like that 3 technique on the interior. So this is, a really interesting spot, but it does have, a very comfortable feel with Nolan Smith being a Georgia guy going to Atlanta. So the Chicago Bears, who traded out of the first overall pick to come at 9, this is where they're selecting. We know what they've addressed a little bit in the offseason, so I feel like I can kind of have a free-for-all here with this pick. And,
I know.
Is this a pick that the Bears are going to use to help bolster and solidify what that offense is going to be and go offensive line? Is this a team that was like, oh my God, we invested so much in the offense in the offseason that we're going to compensate the defensive side of the ball? So there's a lot of directions I can go here. I feel like offensive line and your prediction with Skoronski could be a great fit here. But I am going to shy away from that a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, you let me into it.
Yeah. But I am going to shy a little bit away from it. I feel like there are a lot of great corners on the board here, and I feel like the defensive back position for the Bears is something that they're going to have to address. Look, the Packers are a team that is locked and loaded in the defensive back to secondary position. Yeah, they're losing a little bit of the wide receivers, but I feel like that's also a way to give yourself an edge inside the division, right? The Lions are going to have 3 wide receivers that are going to be really competitive. I mean, we know Amon-Ra, they have Jamison Williams, and they just brought back Marvin Jones. So that's a pretty decent core there. They could add to that. I'm just not expecting that to be a first-round kind of guy like I was considering that they were before the Marvin Jones addition. Not saying that he's going to shy you away from an Njigba or anything like that, but, this could be, more of a guy that could get more of a team that could draft like a Hyatt, like you were talking about,
right.
A little bit later. So with Chicago here, Ben, stand up. This is where we're going to get Christian Gonzalez going to the Chicago Bears. This guy had a great combine, tested well, had a great collegiate season, and I feel like this could be a little bit more of a value on the back end of one. Offensive line is a big hole here. Just think that, maybe they go in a Jones or a right direction. I just feel like Gonzalez is the best fit going here, and I feel like he can really help bring, some attitude and swagger to that defensive back secondary position. So Christian Gonzalez, 9 to the Chicago Bears.
Love it. Absolutely love it. So we got the Philly Eagles. This is going to be a fun one. They got 2 picks. They're getting New Orleans pick here at 10. They lost a lot in the offseason. Miles Sanders to address the offense there. A lot of their offensive line signed back, so I think they're still going to be okay there. They are going to need to have some people to start backfilling as, we start to see Jason Kelsey consider retirement, Lane Johnson. So that's a position you can consider, but I think Philly needs to stay more on the defensive end here. They lost a lot of players on the defense. Kazir White, they lost TJ Edwards, and those are 2 guys right off the bat that are in the linebacker position. Now, they're not necessarily as much pass rushers, but I do think that they have Hassan Reddick on one side, and they've really firmed up that front 4. I kind of think they're going to need to go backwards a little bit here into the linebacker position, which I think you can draft later. So I wouldn't be shocked to see the Eagles actually trade back a little bit more or find a pick for next year.
Howie loves to trade a Howdy.
Love it. Literally loves it. But I'm going to go a little crazy here. I think that they could also take a risk because they have a second pick and they have a good defense still. They're paying a lot. But I think they can take a risk here.
Okay.
Do you have an idea of where you think I'm going?
I'm hoping that it's not wide receiver, but I think you're going to go on the offensive side of the ball and take someone that hasn't had somebody else drafted at that position yet.
I'm staying defense.
Okay.
And when I say risk, I mean they're saying this person has it's Jalen Carter.
Okay.
I think because they have a second pick, and I've had multiple situations in which I've done mock drafts, and I actually had him going at 20 to Seattle because they can take that risk. They have another first-round pick that they can hit on.
Yeah.
But if they end up and Jalen Carter works out, he could be a nightmare on that defense for years to come.
It'll be a nightmare to the Giants for years to come. That's for sure.
And I'm sorry to tell you, but if they can get Jalen Carter here, right, we all know how horrific everything has been going on with him, but I see him going to a team with 2 picks, and with a team like Philly that has they're a good organization. They're a really good team. Again, they lost a lot of players on the defensive side. I could see them firming that up, and you re-signed a guy like Fletcher Cox who can help maybe get Jalen Carter back on track here, because we all know how good he is, but it's the mental thing that he's going to have to stay on the field. So
yeah.
I'm going to go Jalen Carter to Philly.
I'm no complaints there. Jalen Carter, has the talent to be first overall. What I do think is really interesting, Twon, is, Jalen Carter was certainly here on my top prospects to consider, for this mock draft. But 2 teams I already heard that are out on Jalen Carter. The Raiders are one of them. So he's off their draft board altogether.
He has to be. Any player that has any kind of skepticism like
off
that,
the field issues,
you cannot put them in Las
Vegas.
Vegas.
Yeah.
Or they're going to jail.
Absolutely. They're going to jail. Yeah. No, and I feel like a team like Vegas has learned from this. When Mayock and Gruden were there, I feel like those weren't things. I don't want to say that they didn't really consider, because Cleveland Farrell wasn't really a guy that had off the field issues. Mm-hmm. But look at Henry Ruggs. This dude isn't even in the NFL anymore. You know what I mean? They thought Jonathan Abrams was going to be, the next coming of Troy Polamalu, and he's been on 2 teams since he was drafted, to them. So
Arnett?
What?
Was Arnett another one?
Damon Arnett, yeah. This dude was showing up with AK-47s on an Instagram Live.
You can't put kids in Vegas, dude.
Yeah.
You just can't do it.
No, absolutely. And, that's an unfortunate scenario, right? You shouldn't have to, control professionals on what they need to do when they're not on the job, right? Mm-hmm. And, that's a big part of it. But since the Sandbox fans, we just got through the top 10 of our mock draft. What do you guys think? Is there some names in here in this top 10 that you guys were like, oh my God, I wasn't expecting to hear him till later? Is there some names that you were like, oh, that could be a sneaky pick? I'm going to run through the top 10 picks once again. We have C.J. Stroud at 1, Bryce Young at 2, Will Anderson at 3, Anthony Richardson at 4, Tyree Wilson at 5, Devin Witherspoon at 6, Paris Johnson at 7, Nolan Smith at 8, Christian Gonzalez at 9, and Jalen Carter at 10.
Those are some good players.
Some good players, yeah. And these are a lot of the names that I'm expecting to hear around the top 10. But, we'll see as we get closer to the draft. With number 11, Tennessee, this is also a team I feel like is likely to trade back just because of the amount of holes that they have. Tennessee is a team that was a contender probably 2 years ago and is now looking like one of the teams that needs to fill out their roster as one of the most in the entire NFL. This is a team that drafted a quarterback last year, but we still have no idea what that scenario was really going to look like with Malik Willis. But what I will say is I did see Mike Vrabel attending the pro day for Darnell Wright. And he was actually the offensive line coach working him through his drills. So I'm wondering if Vrabel's really looking to get one of those guys solidify the tackle position. And that's how you have to build a team, in the trenches, and then you work on the back end. They might still like Treylon Burks. We obviously have an opinion about him, but Derrick Henry is still there, and on the back end, they still have a guy like Byard, and they still have Jeffrey Simmons, in the defensive line position. Let's get a mauler at the offensive line. So this is where I have tackle Darnell Wright going for Tennessee. I feel like that's very fitting for what they're looking to do, and just kind of helps address a team need for Tennessee. So Darnell Wright going to Tennessee.
I like that a lot. I do. That's a great pick, and I did not know that Vrabel was doing his O-line drills. But I like that with you, because also Taylor Lewan's not going to be around forever.
That's right.
It's something they're going to need another tackle to help out, and eventually they will be addressing that quarterback position. But when you're back here and you're missing out on Anthony Richardson, C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, you may not want to take one just yet. You may wait to go back for maybe a Hendon Hooker.
Ooh. Okay, Twon. So Twon, you got Houston's second pick here. So luckily you were able to take their entire draft class for the first round. So what are you thinking? They have a Bryce Young. Are you looking to, pair that up with somebody else in the offensive side of the ball? Are you going to go defense to complement your roster? What are we thinking?
Texans need help at wide receiver still.
We haven't had a wide receiver go off the board yet.
And the first one going off the board, I know I said in prior episodes I thought it would be Addison. I think that for the Texans, Jackson Smith and Jigba is going at 12.
Okay.
I think him paired with Bryce Young looks like a nightmare. They got Mechie over there. They do have, a veteran presence in Robert Woods and Dalton Schultz. I think you draft a receiver right there at that 12 spot. Ooh, a lot of teams should be looking out. I understand that they were the Texans, but they get Bryce Young and then they get another receiver. They were not the Texans of old. They are the Texans of new, and that could be scary, man. That could be very scary. So I got Njigba going.
No, this is a great weapon. I feel like, this is actually a very realistic fit and could be a likely scenario. I mean, in previous years, we haven't seen a wide receiver drop all the way to 12 to be their first selection. So maybe that's us just being a little defensive crazy from 7 to 12, you know what I mean? But I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. There's a lot of defensive talent. There's a lot of offensive linemen. And it all depends on what really happens with those first couple quarterbacks. I do think Anthony Richardson's going to be a top 10 guy. So even if he doesn't go at 4 to the Colts, I feel like he'll still be taken in those past selections that we were really making. So Smith and Jigba, I feel like could be, a guy that can take on either a wide receiver 2 role or a 1 role, depending on what Mechie's value is really going to be to Houston. So we obviously elaborate a little bit more with that. And Bryce Young should be the day 1 starter there. I can't imagine that they're going to be like, oh, Davis Mills, you're going to be a bridge. You're going to be the bridge over Bryce Young. You know what I mean?
Davis Mills, get on your bike and go home.
Yeah. But I honestly feel like if this is the route that Houston goes and maybe, in 2 or 3, they draft an offensive lineman to go on the opposite side of Tunsil. Obviously, they're investing a little bit in free agency and they have some decent interior offensive line play, but they definitely still need to address the defensive side of the ball, and I'm sure D'Amico Ryans will find his guys to do so. But I think surrounding talent around the offense, especially when you're a defensive-minded head coach, will be extremely important. So Houston at 12, and now I'm left with the goddamn Jets.
There we go, baby. There we go.
So let's assume Aaron Rodgers does finalize his trade. Let's assume Alan Lazard is a guy that does play for the Jets. So we're talking about an offense that's loaded with Garrett Wilson, Alan Lazard, Aaron Rodgers, and Breece Hall. I can't sit here and say that I'm going to focus on a wide receiver for the New York Jets at this selection. I know that they have talent on the defensive side of the ball. I would assume that the secondary is going to be deferred a little bit later on. Sauce Gardner, being invested in with the top 3 pick from last year. I don't think that they need to go cornerback position right now, even though pairing Sauce with another high caliber corner could absolutely, be a difference maker to that defense. I do think that this is where they're going to add depth to the trenches. Now, Twon, I can go in many different ways. I can go offensive line here. I could go defensive line. But this is where I'm going to go with your guy, Skoronski.
Yep.
I do just feel like if you're going to have Aaron Rodgers go there, you need to keep him upright. The Jets are going to have a very extremely small, very tiny championship window. So if you do have that, you need to make sure that you're putting guys with Mechie Becton and just make sure that you have that depth, even if you have an injury, even if one of these tackles that you have at a very young rookie contract type of age has to play the guard position for a little bit just to protect your quarterback and your offense a little bit more. We talked about how crazy deep the AFC East is nowadays. You're going to need healthy and consistency on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. I feel like they have a lot of young talent on that defensive side. I feel like this is a great spot for them to get an offensive lineman. And this really helps for even after Rodgers, right? If Rodgers is only here on a 2-year stint, these offensive linemen that you have now are still going to be your guys for whatever the next helm is. Skoronski at 13 to the Jets, I feel like, is a good spot. And wow, look at this. It gives you New England at 14.
Woo! All right. So, first of all, I think Jets fans would be psyched with getting another tackle, somebody that would stay on the field more than 3 games, unlike Mekhi Becton. But that's neither here nor there. The Patriots. There's a lot of
questions for the Pats.
There's so many good players on the board here, and I would be extremely upset if we found a way to trade back. There is no reason that I think we should trade back here. There's so many good players on the board. I do think we're going to need a little bit more help at corner, and I would love to see my boy Joey Porter in a New England Patriots jersey.
Is this a scenario where the Pats could likely trade back?
Yes, of course. Yeah. It's the Patriots. There's a strong chance that they trade back to the 31st pick with, they won't trade with Kansas City. They'll trade back to like 29 or something like that.
New Orleans, yeah.
Get a second and then a washing machine. And then it's like, oh, they traded back again and I'm up until midnight just for them to draft somebody I don't know.
Yeah. Sorry, you can watch the Giants pick.
That's right, exactly. But let's act like they're not going to trade back here. Let's act like I'm, going to be happy on draft night. Joey Porter. I think we need to address the cornerback position. I would also not be shocked to see them take a tackle, someone like Broderick or Anton Harrison. But I think they're going to go corner here. I think Joey Porter's going to be the move. We have a really, really good secondary, specifically at the safety position with Jabril and Duggar. And then you got Jonathan Jones on one side as a corner. You got Jack Jones. And, Marcus Jones, too, can cover, but he's also small. You're going to need another guy in there, and I think Joey Porter fits the Patriots mold perfectly.
Interesting, Twon. I really thought that this was going to be an offensive selection. Not thinking that the Patriots couldn't go with the defensive back position. Bill Belichick loves to get his defensive backs, but I did think, the Jones triplets at the cornerback position, I was like, is Twon going to think that this is enough depth to really, not neglect the position, but holes at offensive line? A wide receiver at this caliber at 14 can really be plug and play to be your number one, and Juju could just be a true 2 at that point. So that was really interesting, Twon, especially with, an Addison or a Zay Flowers from BC connecting that Boston type of connection there. That would have been really interesting, giving Mac, some support.
The last receiver we drafted in the first round?
Yep, I do. N'Keal Harry.
Do you remember everybody that came after him?
Yes.
I do not want Bill touching the receivers in the first round.
Interesting.
He won't hit.
How close would a Broderick Jones be here, though?
I think he's the next option. If Johnson or Skaronski are on the board here, I think that's the pick. But they're gone, and likely they will be as well. So,
if I didn't take Skaronski at 13, you would have picked him
absolutely.
Here? Okay.
Absolutely. Him and I think Broderick Jones is great. I think Anton Harrison's great too. And Darnell Wright, you snagged him too, but they're
I'm snagging them all.
There's so many good tackles here that they could get. It's almost too perfect to pick a tackle where I think Bill's we'll figure it out. We'll get a tackle in the later rounds. I want a Legion of Boom type defense. I want just a shutdown defense, the boogeymen again.
Yeah.
And I think it just fits really well. And we have a lot of corners that we haven't even talked about yet that are really, really good that could go to the Patriots later.
Absolutely.
But I think if Bill sees that Joey Porter name on the board and, you don't have a Skaronski, Paris Johnson, or Darnell Wright gone, or you have all three of them gone, I think you're going to end up with a corner.
No, absolutely, Twon. I got you. I think that's a good spot. Joey Porter, I feel like, is a top 20 pick in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't be surprised if New England went defense, but Joey Porter would be a great addition for the New England Patriots. Hoping he doesn't go there because I want to root for Joey Porter. but
we're not even in your division. We're not the Eagles.
It's all right. Fuck you, Pats. Sorry, Anna. I saved those videos.
You're not invited to Palm Sunday dinner anymore.
Yeah. Oh shit. I saved those videos. I'm sure Anna will like to see your swearing montage coming up real soon.
No.
Stay tuned.
It wasn't me. It's voiceover.
Yeah, it was Nick.
The internet is crazy.
Nick.
The internet's crazy these days.
At 15, we're at the halfway point through the first round, and the first round's always the longest round to really get through, but the most exciting. Green Bay is picking here at 15, and maybe this is a team that gets 14 and 15, or 13 and 15 if they end up doing a trade, for Aaron Rodgers. I think that might be a little bit more outside of the first round with the draft compensation that gets swapped there, assuming that it will be draft compensation that gets swapped, but we're assuming that Jordan Love is going to be the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers for this upcoming year, but this is also a team that's missing a bunch of specialists. No more Devontae Adams. Randall Cobb ain't there no more. Alan Lazard ain't there no more. What was it? Mercedes Lewis at the tight end position. He
should have been gone 5 years ago.
No Bobby Tonyan at the tight end position no more. So this is a team that's really lacking offensive specialists outside of Aaron Jones. I feel like that this is a scenario where if you're handing the keys over to Jordan Love, regardless if you think he's going to be your guy for the next 10 years or not, you have to give him some help. This help can come, with the offensive line. This help can come on the defense and just trying to keep him, getting as many opportunities to get onto the field as possible. But I feel like if you really neglect the wide receiver position here in the first round, not that it's going to be significantly different in round 2 because the Packers have a extremely great history of drafting wide receivers late. But there's a lot of great wide receivers left on the board, Twon. We only have one wide receiver go so far.
Crazy.
It is crazy, and I honestly feel like by the time we get to 15 on actual draft day, we might see 3 guys go by this point.
Absolutely.
But at this point in time, I feel like the best wide receivers left on the board have to be either Quentin Johnson, Zay Flowers, or Jordan Addison here. You're going to think I'm a little bit crazy, but I am going to go with a Quentin Johnson here over an Addison and a Zay Flowers. I think he has a little bit more of the big go up and get it type of playmaking ability. Not that Zay Flowers and Addison couldn't with their size, but I just feel like when you're playing in Green Bay, you're going to need those balls. I mean, I feel like we've seen Aaron Rodgers, whether it was with the Hail Mary passes of years past, or, just crazy catches from that wide receiver position, so you need that production. I think this is also a team that addresses the tight end extremely early. Wouldn't be surprised if they're one of the first teams to draft a tight end. I think 15 is a little bit too early to do that, so maybe, they try and trade with a team like the Giants to 25. I don't think the Giants are going to be interested in moving up, but if you want to draft the first tight end of the class, just think 15's too early. This is where I have Quentin Johnson going. Think he could still go in and be, a great playmaker for them. Not sure, how much success he's really going to have with Jordan Love, but I feel like that you need to compensate for the losses that you have and need to try and establish your future core. Quentin Johnson here.
This one's going to be interesting. It's Washington, and I could see this being a team that addresses the quarterback position, but with them recently getting Howell and them deciding that he's going to be the starter, they still are going to need a backup. They could go Levis here. I don't think they do.
Really?
No. I think they're going to address a different position, and I don't know that it's going to be on the offensive end either.
Okay.
I think that, the way Ron Rivera coaches is if he has a shutdown defense, he'll find a way to try and make it work on offense, and hasn't really worked overly well yet with Washington, but again, he's working with a Heineke, he's working with a Carson Wentz, and just an injury-prone team with a really bad organization. So I think they're going to address the defensive side, and I think they're going to go best player on the board here. You might call me crazy. I think the best player on the board on the defensive side here is going to be Luke Van Ness.
Okay. No, I don't hate it at all.
Unbelievable pass rusher, and he could be a great pairing with Chase Young. Once Chase Young's healthy, we all know what he can do. But if you get Luke Van Ness on the other side of him with Jonathan Allen right up the middle, that's going to be a scary, I don't even know if they're going to run a 3-4 or 4-3, but
I mean, I'm assuming that they'd probably run a 4-3. They just locked up De'Aaron Payne for one of the largest defensive lineman contracts of all time too. So yeah, we didn't see too much of Chase Young last year, but we know what his impact really is for that team. And this is a unit that loves drafting that front seven. They draft Jamin Davis, a couple years ago at the linebacker position. Obviously, Young on the outside. You have Payne and Jonathan Allen on the defensive line interior. So, they have a lot of guys, and I'm pretty sure they have another pass rusher that they drafted early the past couple years. Regardless, I think Van Ness could be a good fit. I thought this was going to be an interesting spot for you to potentially go defensive back here because, they don't really have, one of those standout guys, but I feel like, Ron Rivera always compensated the front seven a little bit more than the back end. So I feel like that's a very likely scenario that they can go in. 16 for Van Ness could be a great value,
Great value.
Especially where he's kind of being looked at amongst his peers for the draft class. So this leaves me with the Pittsburgh Steelers here at 17. A lot of different directions I can go because I would assume that their major holes, their biggest holes for their team are offensive line, and defensive back. So it gives me a lot of options. I do feel like if you're looking at last year, a lot of the reason why you didn't have a lot of success is because you couldn't sustainably keep your offense on the field. So I feel like as much as I want to go with a great value here in the defense for a cornerback or a defensive line, feel like if I don't go offensive line here, I'd be failing the Steelers fans. So
very much so.
So Steelers fans, I got you, and we're all hoping for a tackle here. This is where I have Broderick Jones going. I do feel like this is a likely scenario if Joey Porter was available at 17 that he could go and really kind of have that family type of feel. And I feel like the Steelers are a team that kind of really values that. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But, where Joey Porter's dad obviously had, a lot of success for the Steelers and the history that's there, I feel like they might have a little bit more of homework done on him. Just my opinion. But Broderick Jones should keep Kenny Pickett up for years to come. A lot of running holes for Najee Harris, and hopefully that shows you that Deontay Johnson and George Pickens is a good enough wide receiver core for them to really have success. Broderick Jones here for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I love it. And then at 18, this is where we got Detroit again, so... Man, I'm getting a lot of these doubles. I love it.
Yeah, I know. I'm a little jealous.
At the 18 spot, we already addressed corner with Devon Witherspoon. There's a lot of other options that they can go with here. I do think they need help with the tight end. I know we talked about Brock Wright, and you guys know I do that every time.
Yeah, it's all right.
Brock Wright, and you'll know about him. I don't think he's the answer at tight end, though.
Is this the first tight end off the board?
We're at 18, though. I do think it's too early.
Okay.
And I think they're going to try and firm up that front seven a little bit more. We addressed the corner back there. We obviously know that Detroit had a pretty good offense last year, putting up a ton of points. But their defense was what was holding them back. And you got Aiden Hutchinson for a pass rusher. I think you firm up the interior. I got Brian Breeze going to Detroit at number 18.
All right, Brian Breeze. This is a guy I'm a little shocked because you have him going before Miles Murphy.
I do.
Wow.
I do. I think he's going to play interior. I think they need to address interior D-line a little bit more than they do specific pass rusher.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a bad pick at all. It's definitely a position that they need to address, and they need to continue to kind of create that depth, right? Aiden Hutchinson already there. I mean, there's going to be, a lot of front seven attention that is going to need to be addressed for the Lions to be a consistent playoff team, right? That was one of I would say the defense as a whole was one of their weaker positions, on their team. So addressing that and, what the team needs that I have Detroit had, it was defensive line, defensive back, and tight end. So you addressed two of their biggest needs with the selections that, you really had there, Twon. So no disagreements, and that leaves me with Tampa Bay here at 19. So
this is fun.
Yeah, this is really interesting because this is a team that needs legit everything. So I can go in any direction. And, it's really interesting to see how this is going to work out for Tampa Bay. Do they still view themselves as a team that can win that South? I don't know that that's really the case. You do have, some talent in the wide receiver room with Evans and Godwin that you could still do so, right? You do have a young tackle in Wirfs that it's like, maybe we could defer to a little bit later. You still have Vita Vea, Levante David signed back for a little bit. So, they really could go in whatever direction. You want me to be honest, though, you can't have an off season this year with Kyle Trask and Baker Mayfield at the helm and say that things are going to look positive for the future. So just like Pittsburgh Steelers last year, they stayed put to where they were. It might not have been the quarterback that they were hoping for, but this is where I have Levis going here. And I feel like because they stood still at 19, this is a great value pick for them. Not sure if this is really going to be a guy that's going to be, their franchise for the next 15 years, but it helps kind of figure that out if he's going to be or not. And even if this isn't the proper coaching staff to figure that out, this guy doesn't necessarily have to play this year. If you do like Trask or you do like Mayfield, ease him into it. At least he can grow with an Evans and a Godwin and kind of get, some positive experience and just getting his feet wet in the NFL. Isn't a guy that I'm expecting to play in year one. If he did, I don't want to say that I would be shocked, but I just think that Tampa has way too many holes to toss a rookie quarterback in to say, okay, you're going to be successful. So I think Levis is more of a long-term play, but a great value to help walk up their franchise going forward.
Now I'm going to get crazy with you.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
Seattle, second pick. If Jalen Carter's on the board, I could see it happening there for our mock draft. I sent him up too early, so... They could address corner. I think there are a couple of really good players out there. They could address tackle. I'm looking at two more that I think could go in the first round. But I think they're going to get Hendon Hooker.
Oh, do you?
I think they're going to go Hendon Hooker. I think he's a guy that... And it's funny because up until this moment, I didn't know if he was going to go in the first round.
But were you thinking Levis was going to go there?
There was a chance if he was there. I think I was going to snag him, but I think Hendon Hooker fits that mold really, really well. He's somebody that Geno can groom, and he's someone that I wouldn't expect to start right off the bat for a team. He's somebody that can be in the room with Geno there, and he's going to have the wide receiver weapons to play well. Their defense has started to get firmed up a little bit, so I think that Hendon Hooker is going to go at 20 to Seattle per our draft.
Wow. So in our mock draft, that gives us 5 quarterbacks going inside the top 20. Not unlikely in today's NFL. Do just think that that's an impression right there with the mock draft. So we love to see that. And That's our next 10 picks. So let's take it here.
Let's
Twon,
go.
give us the rundown from 11 to 20.
All right. At 11, Tennessee, Darnell Wright. Then we went in Jigba at 12 to Houston. Skoronski at 13 to the Jets. Joey Porter to the Pats at 14. Woo! Quentin Johnston at 15 to Green Bay. Luke Van Ness, 16 to Washington. 17, Broderick Jones to Pittsburgh. 18, Brian Breeze to Detroit. Tampa Bay getting Levis at 19. And then Seattle sneaking with Hendon Hooker at number 20.
Yeah, guys, things are getting spicy. We got 5 quarterbacks going. The wide receiver class taking a little bit of a dip, but let's see what's going to happen with this back end, this 21 to 31. This is really interesting. This is a lot more of the contenders in the playoff teams. So let's get right into it. At 21, I'm so blessed to have the LA Chargers here with their pick. The Chargers have a lot of holes. This is a team that was just shy of the playoffs for the past couple of years, and we're hearing everything that's going on in the offseason. Is Austin Eckler going to be our running back of the future? You know, what's going on with all the contracts? We're paying Joey Bosa $30 million, Khalil Mack $30 million, Keenan Allen $15+ million, Mike Williams $15+ million. None of these guys are playing a complete season. So are we really investing in the proper options to help our franchise get solidified for success? All the questions with Austin Eckler really make you wonder if Bijan Robinson is a name that can be called to him. Should I do it, guys? I'm not gonna have Bijan go here. Not that at this point in the draft anyone's available to draft Bijan Robinson with the talent that he is. And he might not even fall this far in the draft if you want me to be honest. Bijan could go right around that 10 spot to the Philly Eagles, but with the LA Chargers, I feel like they need to, kind of make up some of that production. I do feel like the defensive line is a big spot for them that they can really help solidify. And, with the talent left on the board, I feel like Myles Murphy is a great value here at 21 overall. So this is where I'm going to have Myles Murphy going there with Bosa and Khalil Mack, assuming that they're going to still be there when the season comes around. I think that this is a really interesting spot where this guy can have tremendous success, week one coming into the NFL. I think that they need some defensive standouts. Obviously, financially, they've committed to that, going forward, but they haven't had, the health to do so. Hopefully, Myles Murphy really changes that, and he's a guy that they can build along with Herbert for years to come. So I think this is a great spot for a Chargers team looking to get in the playoffs and need some great defensive play in that division.
I love that because, as we've talked about numerous times, you have no idea how many times Joey Bosa is going to play. And to have somebody that's, NFL ready to be able to backfill him there or just play the other side if he does end up playing, it's going to be really, really helpful. So love that pick.
Twon, how did you end up with the Baltimore Ravens?
It's destiny. Uncle Tony, what do we want? I'm looking at the board here. Just knowing the situation the Ravens are in, I think it'd be stupid for them not to draft a receiver. I think it really is that simple for them. And there are two options that are coming to my head. Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers. Jordan Addison can play a little bit more of that burner. Zay Flowers, more of a possession receiver. They got Rashad Bateman. I think they're going to go in the Zay Flowers area. I think they need more of a possession receiver, and I think he's going to make an immediate impact for that team. And the guy is a monster. Have you seen those shoulders?
Auntie Wonder would be so happy with a BC guy going to Baltimore.
She's like,
I could root for BC and still support my son.
There you go. See, it all works out great. Zay
Linda,
Flowers
it's for you.
For the Scarpa family. I love it. Zay Flowers to Baltimore.
No, but I think that really addresses, a big hole. I mean, obviously we hear the Ravens, in the D-Hop sweepstakes. This is a team that has an current offer out for Odell Beckham. So being able to tell Lamar, like, hey, we care about you. Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews are great tight end, position guys at the position, Adding an Addison and potentially either a D-Hop or an OBJ to that offense should give Lamar enough weapons to really, be in position for success going forward. Twon, I was curious, is this – I know that this is a little unlike the Ravens because of the way that they like to build, but where there's such a ground and pound team, is Bijan out of the question here for them?
I don't think so because you got Dobbins, but just having Dobbins and then Gus Edwards, I don't know that that's a reasonable committee for a player like Lamar that's going to run the ball a lot, and you're going to want him to pass and things like that, though. But let's not kid ourselves. The Ravens are a run-first team. you get a bell cow like Bijan Robinson, he can play 3 downs a game.
Yeah.
Or 3 downs a drive or whatever. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
He's a 3 down back.
Downs a game, yeah.
He's a 3 down back, and he's someone that can make an immediate impact. I think he's NFL ready, and we see it with those Alabama running backs. I mean, they've been tremendously successful. So
Should keep your quarterback fresh, too.
Yep, exactly. 100%, and he's just a bull. Like, he's a guy that is you're going to go up to tackle him the first couple times. You're going to say, okay, this isn't that bad. And then you're going to get to the third quarter, and you're going to go, holy shit. Like, man.
Right?
But I think to show that Lamar, that they give a shit, like, it's got to be the receiver position. I know they have something out there for Odell, but if that doesn't come to fruition, even if it does, like to say, we got Odell, we also got you a first-round receiver, you have Bateman, so let's see what we can do here before you make any rash decisions. And it just seems like he doesn't want to be there. But, you know, if they're going to do their best to keep him, you got to show them they give a crap. So,
yeah.
Zay Flowers.
Twon, I was just telling you before the podcast, and I spent a lot of time with Uncle Tony yesterday. This scenario for Lamar is unlike, you know, any other negotiation that we've really gone through in the NFL. And the reason for that is just because Lamar's representing himself. When he's having these negotiations, it's personal. He's saying this organization, this job, this career that wants me to work for them, that put my life, my body on the line, they don't want to lock me up. They don't want to take care of me. And he's just like, well, I gave them my all. Like the past 2 seasons, I missed 12 games because I didn't have the weapon. The past 2 seasons, he missed 12 games because he didn't have the weapons that he was necessarily supposed to. And this is a person that carried them to 12 wins the past couple of years when he didn't have a supporting cast that should reciprocate 12 wins. You know what I mean? So
100%.
I think there's a lot more to it. I think it's tough to see Lamar in this scenario as a fan of the NFL. I assume that he's a top 5 quarterback in most people's books, maybe 6, just depending on how you really value the quarterback position and the style of play that you look for. I think it's really tough to say that Lamar is going to be, you know, a Raven for his career. I think that's a statement that you can almost guarantee is not the likely scenario. Maybe for this year he is. I said worst case scenario, I hope this isn't another Le'Veon Bell situation.
I know, that'd be the worst. Oh, that'd be awful.
Yeah.
Especially if he had a fall off like Le'Veon, like that'd be awful.
Yeah.
Because I remember Le'Veon going 2 overall, 1 overall in every fantasy league for like 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
I think he's too committed to playing football. I just don't think it's going to be for Baltimore.
Yeah. No, we'll see. We'll see what's going to go on with everything with Lamar. So make sure you guys stay tuned to Since the Sandbox so we can keep you updated with that. But at 23, this is where I have the Minnesota Vikings, and I'm happy that the way this draft worked out because it actually is going to give me the New York Giants pick at 25 too. So
I was going to give it to you, I promise. You gave me Pats, I'll take it.
I was gonna give you Patriots anyway, but it's funny that it worked out that way in Baltimore too. So
that was just for Uncle Tony.
But with Minnesota at 23, you know, this is a team that I think exceeded expectation as far as the regular season came, but disappointed when it came down to playoffs. And this is a team that still has Kirk Cousins locked up at the quarterback position. I don't think that there's a quarterback they're taking with this spot. Even though Addison is still on the board, and I can't believe he's fallen to 25 range. With the way that our draft's working out, this is no disrespect to Jordan Addison. So if you're watching this, we love you.
We do, we absolutely do. But it's weird because we're also not making trades. Like teams will make trades on draft nights, and there will be a receiver run.
Yeah,
we're just not going to throw off the whole draft by doing that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So Minnesota, I think that they kind of have their offensive line solidified. They had some good play last year. They have a good running back room, obviously led by Dalvin Cook. They have depth at the tight end position now that they have Hawkinson. So I feel like this is really a position where I have to address the back end because a great year last year for Patrick Peterson. I know your brother wasn't too happy about me saying that, but I think that they have to address the secondary with Pat Pete, going on to the Steelers. So this is where I have Cam Smith going, who I think is the next cornerback, best cornerback on the board, and I feel like they need to have that cornerback locked up for the future. If you're a team that still wants to compete in that division and the Lions have a wide receiver room the way that they do, if you plan on beating that team, you got to find a way to cover them. You can't just win your games in a shootout. So I feel like that this is a good, little value. The last cornerback that we had go off the board hasn't been for, since 14 going with Joey Porter. So Cam Smith here at the cornerback position, I feel like this is a really good pick for the Vikings, and this should be a pick that should have some impact day one in the NFL.
I agree with you. I think that's great. And coming up with Jacksonville, another team that I love, man. This is perfect. So I think they're going to address the defensive side of the ball. The offense has looked really, really good. I do think they also could be in the market for a tackle, but I think that they're going to look at, listen, we're not overly stressed and need too much right now. I think they're going to go with a Deontay Banks at corner. So I think they can solidify the cornerback position there. And he's somebody that really is kind of falling lower than where I would expect him to go. So understanding he's out of Maryland, they don't necessarily play all the best teams, but he still just makes an impact every time he's on the team. So every time he's on the field. So I see him going as one of the best players available at Jacksonville at 24.
Yeah, and depth at that cornerback position, I feel like can really help solidify what that defense will be as a unit. We talked about Trayvon Walker, Josh Allen in their front seven, who they've really had and what they're going to be for years to come. But kind of building up and establishing that back end is going to be really important to future success for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And that leads me to the New York Football Giants here picking at 25. And I know with Jordan Addison on the board at 25, this is what we're screaming, Addison, wide receiver. Let's solidify Daniel Jones. I don't think the Giants are going to do it. I think Addison, if he was the wide receiver that's left here at this spot, it makes it really tough because he is probably, the second or third best wide receiver in this entire class.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's a hole that we need to address. And we lost last year the two starting centers that we had, Nick Gates and John Feliciano. Nick Gates went to Washington. Feliciano will be the starting center for the 49ers. So it makes it really interesting. I feel like this is where the first interior offensive lineman is really going to go off the board. And, there's no really specific guy that I'm like, oh, this guy is jumping off the board. This guy is the one. Just looking at the two top interior offensive linemen, you have Tippmann and you have Torrance, at that guard center position. I think the Giants are going to go in the direction of Tippmann. Is that who you have as your top interior offensive lineman?
I have Osiris Torrance.
Okay, you have Torrance, right? Yeah, so, either way, where they go, I feel like that this guy is going to come in and be the starting center for the New York Giants. So it gives you Andrew Thomas, Evan Neal, and Tippmann at that center position. Really young going forward, and that's okay. But we need to make sure that Daniel Jones can stand up on his feet. We need to make sure that Saquon Barkley has these rushing holes. Look at what a guy like a Linderbaum has done for the Ravens. Or I feel like we've seen a lot of these top interior offensive linemen come into the NFL and have tremendous success. So I have Tippmann here going to the Giants. I know all you Giants fans are screaming, Addison, Addison, Addison. But I feel like the Giants might still be making some plays in free agency, and I think we'll still draft a receiver a little bit back of the round. Got the best interior offensive lineman in the class.
For sure. And at 26, here we got the Cowboys. Woo! I get some angry fans coming at me now. Nice.
Angry Cowboys fans.
Here we go. Oh, boy. Chris Rich, watch out. So the Cowboys can go in a variety of different areas here. I feel like they're a team that doesn't need, too much, where I feel like another situation where the best player would likely help them. They lost Zeke. They got Pollard. Pollard isn't always the most healthy person.
Are you going to do it?
I think I'm going to do it. I think Bijan Robinson, if he falls this low, could go to Dallas at 26. And that's a shame because the next two teams are two teams that really could
need a running back.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like if Bijan falls this far, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw a Buffalo or a Cincy try to move up with just those amount of picks, depending on how they value Bijan, because this could be a guy that the Cowboys are targeting, and they're like, oh, my God, if he's here at 20, let's move up with a Seattle and make that happen. You know what I mean? Absolutely. Bijan has that type of an impact, and I feel like his skill set would be a tremendous compliment to a Tony Pollard, who's coming off of, I don't want to say an extensive injury because it's not like it's an ACL or anything like that, but at the running back position, a lower body injury like that, I feel like it is really going to not change the guy, but could impact, his potential. You know what I'm saying?
Durability, too, like going forward.
Absolutely.
You don't want a lingering injury. So you get someone like Bijan to really take all that pressure off. It's like it's plug and play with Zeke. And you can give Bijan more carries than you gave Zeke.
Yeah. No, you're right. 100%. So this leaves me with Buffalo at 27. Kev, you think you're in good hands with Buffalo? Oh man, I'm not sure. This is a unique team, Twon. You don't view them as a contender going forward.
Super Bowl contender.
Yeah. I still think that they're in that range, in that category. I do feel like linebacker's a big hole for them, but even at this back end of one, I feel like it's still really hard to select that pure linebacker like Matt Milano type of linebacker position for them. So with what's available to me, feel like if I don't go Addison here, Bills Nation, Bills Mafia might be really disappointed. And if no D-Hop on the Buffalo Bills, they still need that wide receiver 2-hole filled.
Yep.
I think Jordan Addison would be a great value for them here at 27. Stephon Diggs, I feel like, is going to have a top 3 wide receiver year this year. So you heard it here first in April 2nd. But I think Jordan Addison should add a great dynamic to that field and is that type of a guy that can have that inside type of play that Josh Allen likes to throw to give the wide receiver that wiggle room to do more, but could also take the top off of defense with Josh Allen's big arm ability, could also cater to a wide receiver skill set like Addison. Yeah. So, Kev, I hope you like the wide receiver addition. Jordan Addison here coming to Buffalo Bills at 27.
He's such a good player, too. And here's the thing, whereas, again, I think there's going to be a receiver run made earlier, and with the trades that are going to happen, I could see that's where it happens, but that'd be a huge win if they can get an Addison down there. So, Cincy. Whew. Cincy, I think they're loaded at wide receiver. I don't think it's something they necessarily need to address right now. They've said that they're going to take care of T. Higgins. They're definitely going to take care of Chase.
Tight end?
Tight end is a really, really good spot.
Smart.
Because Hurst is gone.
Irv Smith just got signed there, but I still feel like a Kincaid and Mayer or Washington can really change that offense.
I absolutely agree.
Am I convincing you here, Twon?
You kind of are. I'm trying to think. So they got Orlando Brown. La'el Collins is still there?
No, I think they cut him, but Johan Williams isn't really, Jonathan Williams isn't really too happy about the Orlando Brown signing because what they said with that happening is he's going to have to move over to the right side. Remember, he was the tackle that was selected out of Bama some years ago. He doesn't want to make that transition to the right tackle because I know, especially when he's on either the last year or two of his rookie contract, that's going to affect his pocket. But I feel like in the Bengals scenario, they have no reason to move on from him. Their offensive line has been a hole for years to come, and he hasn't been a top left tackle. Put him over to the right side, maybe he has that success.
Yeah.
So, offensive line is definitely a position that has been evident for Cincinnati for years to come and in years past. But, yeah, I'm really interested to hear, your thoughts. I mean, they lost 2 safeties, too.
Yep, that's another huge part, and we're looking at safeties here. There's a couple here that are good, I got Antonio Johnson, Brian Branch, Jordan Battle.
Yeah. Branch and Battle are the ones that really stand out for me as well. Yeah.
You know what? This is a tough one.
It's got to be tight end to safety, I feel like.
Yeah.
Could go corner, but it's like.
But with the corners left, you got Ricks, you got Ringo. I don't know if they're ready to go right there, especially to Cincy. I think you're jumping at that point.
Yeah.
I think if you go. I'm going to go Jordan Battle.
Okay.
I'm going to go Jordan Battle. Tight end would have been good, but I feel like you convinced me too easily. I can't give up that easy. So, I'm going Jordan Battle at 28-2 Cincy. I think that could be a really good fit. Again, backfilling Von Bell and Jesse Bates. Those are 2 safeties that were incredibly good, talented, really, really good, and that really helped that defense out a lot. Those are 2 major holes. You got to address it. Why not in the first round with a guy like Jordan Battle who can come up and just hit stick anybody?
No, absolutely. I feel like that's a really good spot for them. Like I said, tight end would have been really interesting to see if they're all in offensively or let's kind of round out this team a little bit. Either direction would have been fine. You could still probably get one of the 3 tight ends maybe at your next pick, or maybe you move up to just kind of see what the value to potentially get one of those guys is. This is a really interesting scenario with the 29th pick. This is New Orleans here. And New Orleans has a lot of holes, in my opinion. Defensive line, defensive back, linebacker. So pretty much every level of that defense. But on the offensive side of the ball, besides a future at quarterback position, I still feel like Derek Carr will give you at least 2 to 3 years after making that move for him. But, offensive line and wide receiver, and we saw most of the top wide receivers go. So I don't really think that this is a position where a Downs or a Hyatt is going to go. Even though the potential is there, I just feel like they're going to look to kind of fill out just a little bit more. So, this really has me thinking, is this another tackle position where we have, with New Orleans here at 29, I think they have a lot of directions that they can go, but I do feel like locking up that offensive line and keeping Carr upright is going to be extremely important. So I'm going to have them selecting Twon Jones. This was a guy that was obviously a little bit more on the right side of that offensive line, and he's not going to have to come into the Saints and have, that left tackle expectation. He obviously can if he's talented enough to make that transition. I'm assuming that might be their hope eventually. But coming into this year, he'll probably be a plug-and-play tackle. And that Saints offensive line has been, a little bit banged up as of recently. We haven't seen that rushing success or that passing success as much. So I think Jones is going to be, a great staple to the Saints. And when you're on the back end of one here, really hard to solidify these picks, but I feel like this is still a round one talent.
And here I am again with more doubles.
Yep.
Philly. Here we go.
You don't want to go to Philly.
Oh, man. There's where do we go from here with Philly? I mean, there's so many options for them at this point. Again, I don't think they're going to address the receiver position. They got Goddard at tight end, even though that would be an interesting place to help, just add an offensive weapon. But I think with their offensive line core getting much older, we don't know how much longer they're all going to be around. I do think it makes sense for them to take a stab at an offensive lineman, and I think they're going to go more tackle.
Okay.
They're going to help out with Lane Johnson eventually, and I think you got some guys you can get later in the interior offense.
Guys, Twon had 3 Philly Eagles on his top 10 offensive line rankings.
I got flamed.
Did
for
you?
That. Oh my god! On that post, I was like, "Yeah, I get it. I missed Tunzel. I missed Darrisaw.
Yeah.
I missed Lindstrom.
Oh
my god!
yeah.
What a bad day. That's right. Keep me in check, people.
But Twon's keeping you in check with all your Patriots expectations.
Exactly. Seriously, guys. Oh my gosh. But here I got Philly ending up with Anton Harrison.
Okay.
I think they're going to draft somebody to more backfill of Lane Johnson. I think they can address the interior offensive line a little bit later in the draft. Get an Avila, get a Kirkland, get a Patterson, something like that much later in the draft, 3rd round, around that area. So I think with tackles eventually going to be flying off the board, I think you got to take one here. Anton Harrison at 30 to the Eagles.
Yeah, and especially if you plan on locking up Jalen Hurts, you know what I mean? Lane Johnson and Kelsey are probably having a year or 2 left, at the very most. I mean, if they play more, great. Obviously that sucks going against them, but they're getting up there. Once you're 32 plus and you're balking every single snap of the game, that's a lot of tread on those tires. And you're talking about 2 guys that played through some tough injuries. Obviously, Kelsey with more of that core injury last year, and Johnson with the quad hip type of thing going on. I think that this would be a good addition, especially in a division that teams are heavily investing in the offensive line. The New York Giants, the Dallas Cowboys drafted Tyler Smith at Tulsa last year, so he ended up being a pretty good tackle and made my offensive line rankings last year. So
He's
yeah,
good.
he is. So once they get Tyron Smith healthy, they got all the Smiths on the offensive line in Dallas. So, but Harrison, I feel like this is a really good pick for Philly, and for Philly's needs as far as things go, safety. I feel like they were missing some safety play after they lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson, but also it was offensive line and edge, and you hit it with offensive line, and they had the defensive line taken care of with Jalen Carter. So Twon, you being able to take all the doubles today lost a little bit of fun for me, but it's all right.
Sorry.
Yeah. But the last pick in the draft, Kansas City here at 31, have their biggest need being offensive tackle. They lost Orlando Brown. They signed Jawan Taylor. That's great, but obviously, you want to kind of recuperate and get a little bit more younger at that position. Wide receiver is still a position that they should address. Defensive line and defensive back, they could also go in that direction. I feel like with the value at tight end, this would be really interesting to see them go tight end. Imagine you pair Kelsey up with a Kincaid, Mayer, or Washington. I really feel like any team from this 23 down to 31 could really be in that tight end market. Obviously, there's some teams that have tight ends, but even a Dallas at 26 with no Schultz, they could go a Kincaid or a Meyer at that 26 position, But for Kansas City here at 31, I do have them going pass rusher. There's a couple of different guys that you could really go. But I'm going to go B.J. Ojulari here, just with some NFL experience with his brother playing on the Giants. I feel like this is also a guy that can have that success translate a little bit, right? Coming out of LSU, this guy has plenty of good experience going against some of the best teams. They had Chris Jones, who had a great year last year, but they just cut ties with Frank Clark. So it's okay, what are you really going to rely on going forward to get after the passers? So I think B.J. Ojulari is a great step to do that. I also feel like this is a pick that could be kind of traded or targeted for, some talent that's left around that back end of one. Like I mentioned, any of these tight ends. Or, you have a Cansey at the interior defensive line position, or a Mozzie Smith that kind of, just didn't end up getting selected. Maybe you find a Downs or a Hyatt at the wide receiver position that can kind of be that burner. The reason why I didn't think Kansas City goes in the wide receiver position, Not that this guy is preventing them from taking somebody, but they just drafted a wide receiver last year in the second round. Sky Moore, that's right. So I think that they have some things planned for Sky Moore in that offense going forward. I think he's going to fill a little bit more of like that Mecole Hardman role. I think they will need more of a possession receiver, but Odell's still on the market.
He is still
We'll
on the
see what
market.
happens. We're going to run through 21 to 31 again really quickly. At 21, the Chargers taking Myles Murphy. 22, Baltimore taking Zay Flowers. 23, Minnesota taking Cam Smith. 24, Jacksonville taking Deontay Banks. At 25, my New York Football Giants taking Tippmann at the offensive line position. Twon had Bijan Robinson going 26 to Dallas. Buffalo is selecting Jordan Addison to help out Stephon Diggs at the wide receiver position. Jordan Battle going to Cincinnati to lock up that back end. New Orleans taking DeJuan Jones at the tackle, solidifying that offensive line. The Philly Eagles taking Harrison to walk up that tackle position, in Kansas City taking B.J. Ojolari. Since the Sandbox fans, this was mock draft 1. What do we think? Get on your feet. Yeah.
Let us know.
Yeah, legit. Like, it was Jordan Addison going at 27, way too late. Like, feel free to fill us in. But, guys, the draft is coming up. We're going to get you guys this mock draft, and we're definitely going to have one more coming. Maybe we can get you guys a second mock draft, but we could also just share our picks on a mock draft that we create individually with you guys on social media. So let us know you guys' thoughts. Really interested and excited for the NFL draft coming. Want to see, what's going to happen with Lamar, DeAndre Hopkins, and things like that. But stay tuned for all the content we have coming to you guys. Make sure you guys show some love and get caught up with all things since the Sandbox. Peace, love, 5 stars. You guys know the deal.